The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it. Kel Charcoal Toothpaste. Kel Charcoal. Happy smile.
Hello, welcome to The Point of View. The Point of View is your favorite current affairs program on television. On The Point of View, we select the right topic, we pick the right guest, we ask relevant questions, and we leave you with some very useful insights. Tonight on the program, we want to touch base with a very serious matter in society, a matter that is becoming a societal problem or a social problem. The matter of churches and so-called men or women of God. Over the weekend, we woke up to news of a certain money doubling scheme or scam, if you will, in a particular church in the Greater Accra region, Heaven Way International, headed by one converted fetish priestess, Nana Agrada, she's called, but actually known as Patricia Asiedua. She says she is an evangelist. We want to find out what has become of the Church of God. Has the Church of God become a money-making machine? Are we to blame the prosperity messages that our pastors have been preaching? How is the sheep, or are the sheep of God faring with the persons or the people that God himself has entrusted them with? Does the church need the help of the state by way of regulation to do the right things? That is our discussion tonight. You can join the show with your comments via our WhatsApp number 05505858332, and we'll read your comments to the rest of the world. I'll return after this short break, introduce my guest, and then we'll have the discussion underway. My name is Salom Adonu, sitting in for your regular host, Bernard Able. Don't go away. You're welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we are looking at the issue of Nana Agrada and the money doubling scheme or scam, and what the state makes of all of this. Of course, she was arraigned today before the court, and she was remanded into police custody to reappear sometime later. We want to find out also what the law has to say about all that is going on. But first of all, we want to find out from the men and women in Kasok what has become of their food. So tonight, to help me do the discussion is a Reverend Dr. Emmanuel Kobna Ansa, who is a former executive member of the National Association of Charismatic and Christian Churches, and now the executive director of the Kingdom Equipped Network, and also a deputy general overseer of the Covenant Family Community Church at Cantonment. Reverend, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Also is Reverend Emmanuel Tete, who is the General Secretary of the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council. Reverend, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
We also have a lawmaker, the Honorable Emmanuel Kwesi Bejra, who is MP for Ho West, and also President of the Parliamentary Christian Fellowship. Hello, Honorable. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Salam, and good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners.
Very well. We also have Suleiman Abraima, who is Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Indeed, the media has a huge role to play in all of this, and then he will join us pretty shortly. We'll introduce him and then take his views as well. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program. I don't know how you got to hear about this, but we woke up to news that the lady in question, Patricia Asiedua, evangelist, she calls herself, organized an all-night service where members said she promised to double monies they gave to them, and only for her to disappear, they claim. She has come out with a spirited defense that nothing of that sort happened. It was purely a matter of fundraising, and the people actually misunderstood her. I don't know what you make of this as, somebody who leads a church and somebody who was once a leader of an organization of churches. How did this come to you, and how did you hear it?
Thank you once again, and good evening to your viewers and to my colleagues as well. I think this is typical Ghana. This is the same cycle, as they say, deja vu. I don't know, maybe it's a cycle every 4 months or every 3 months. We have these things and this discussion. Sometimes when we are invited to speak to this, to be honest with you, sometimes you feel as if, when would things change? Because the same pattern, the same cautions are given, the same alarms are raised, and it's almost always as though we are starting afresh. Let me begin by saying that people, especially the media, I think, needs to understand the terrain of the church in Ghana. I say so because, number one, we need to understand that we are in a democracy. And one of the fundamental freedoms that's assured is the freedom of association, the freedom of religion, practice religion, for as long as people don't infringe on the laws, on the rights of others. Now, because of this, every time these things happen, sometimes you hear the media say, what are the church people doing? What are the ecumenical groups doing? Really, let me say this and make it very clear, that ecumenical bodies, such as the Christian Council, the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference, the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, the Ghana National Association of Charismatic and Christian Churches, and all the other ecumenical groups, we are only as strong as those who decide to associate with us by law. We can speak against practices, we can comment, but when it comes to stopping people from practicing their religion or their faith, we do not really have that power. We can only raise the public awareness, as we have been doing through writing. Like I've written a book, others have written books. This is my book on end-time invasion, false prophets and cults. So I open the eyes of the public, and the associations do likewise. We hold seminars, workshops and things to open the eyes so that people will be alert to some of these things. But in spite of all of that, we should bear in mind that we're working within a certain space of literacy levels. We're talking about spiritual literacy, academic literacy, social literacy, then also the issue of poverty. Because there's so much pressure sometimes in the society, people looking for money by fair or foul means, they do not even hear when you are sounding the caution. And I think it goes back not only with church monies, but if you remember a few years ago, scams in the mainstream, different organizations come from different parts of the world, even locally bred ones. You go to the courts, there are many cases like that. When it comes to money, the Ghanaian, in spite of all the warnings, Bank of Ghana say, don't do this. As we speak now, I've been outside Accra. I still see new companies like those that were there about 5-6 years ago with all the warnings. People are still going.
But I say the difference between the companies you're talking about and the church is that when people come to church, they come with a certain faith and belief. And so oftentimes what their leader tells them, they take without a lot of scrutiny. I know people will have issues with that, but it's a matter of faith. People take those with less scrutiny, than they would have taken those if they had same outside. So the point is, can just anybody get up and set up a church? What is a regulatory framework or environment? Can I just get up today, say I have a call upon my life, and so I get 2 or 3 people together and I start a church? Is it that simple?
Yeah, the Constitution allows for that. If you meet in your hall, and you start praying, nobody can stop you. Or having Bible study, say, this is our leader, this is our prophet. You can give yourself any title, any name. There's no law that stops you from doing that. For as long as you don't infringe on the rights of others or break the laws of the land. That is where the issue is. Now, so somebody, and belonging to these ecumenical bodies that can, for example, enforce discipline and order and all that you are expecting, it's voluntary. People may choose. If somebody, the association decides to punish somebody or to ostracize someone, he can just still go on and nothing will happen to him. There are many churches that are unaffiliated to these ecumenical bodies. So it's about your personal, the leaders' personal reverence for God, understand, and then also the followers. How well do they know the God they say they are following? Because really, all these regulatory things, this discussion has been going on over 10, 15 years since this democracy started. We've been talking about this for years. Look, as we speak now, government has talked about a draft charities bill. We've gone to workshops, seminars, and all of that. We all know that the charities bill isn't going to stop these spiritual deviations, the moral and spiritual, because the laws are there. And when we met at the IGP's office, when Lawyer Isankuma came to present to us, we all know that there are many laws that regulate this kind of behavior. So really, it's not the associations or the community bodies or the denominations that can really affect these reforms in the law. The power is already given. There are many laws that people are aware of. And this case now, which is, by the way, in court, if it's about fraud, there are laws about fraud. If there's manipulation or abuse, or people going to church and they being raped or being asked to do demeaning stuff, there are laws about these things there. And the regulatory authorities just have to crack the whip. And the IGP, when he came, assumed office, he told us. And that's why he asked ACE and Co. to come and educate the churches.
Very well.
But unfortunately, the truth be told, many of such guys who are maybe, I'll say, French, will not come. He's tried to engage some of them. They would not participate in such things. And even their followers also don't listen to these mainstream organizations that we are talking about. So the discussion is going on, but really, truthfully, those who are creating the news, which is bad news, oftentimes are not in these circles.
Very well. Let me go to your colleague, Apostle Emmanuel Tete, who is the General Secretary of the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council. Apostle, everybody can get up and set up a church. Do you find this too open-ended? And do you think something should be done about it? And what do you make of suggestions that, as we have in other professions, like the judiciary, for example, persons of a certain moral, aptitude or character or stature, only get into that, presumably. But in the case of doing the work of God, as it were, like your colleague rightly said, anybody can gather a group of people somewhere and begin to profess that he or she is being called, and so church starts. So we have no scrutiny for the morality and the character of those persons. Do you think it's about time we did anything about this as a society or as a country?
Thank you very much, Salam. And let me start off by saying a good evening to viewers and my colleague panelists. In fact, I couldn't agree with Reverend Ansah any more further beyond what he said. You see, the primary legal document of the land has defined how religion can be practiced, or maybe how people can associate religiously. And so from that position, the ecumenical bodies don't have much room to operate beyond their subscribed membership. And it's the same for NAC, that is Christian churches, as it is for GPCC, as it is for the Christian Council of Ghana. I think it is mainly the Catholic Bishops' Conference, which is a homogeneous kind of institution and body. But the rest of us are subscribed by member churches at will. And so we can't do much. I think the responsibility lies rather on government in terms of the legal framework, the constitutional provision. The Constitution, Article 21(1), right from, I think, C through to E and F, all talk about, religious practice, freedom to associate and to form groups and to join them. And so to that extent, like Reverend Ansan said, anybody can meet anywhere and say we are a church and give themselves any title, and nobody can question them on that. Maybe if we want to look at what the government can do, I would think that it's important we provide a certain boundary, provide certain boundaries in the sense that no church will be allowed to be registered if it doesn't subscribe to some recognized ecumenical bodies. You see, there must be a set of recognized ecumenical bodies in the country. And if any group of churches want to register as an ecumenical body, there must be guidelines to accept their registration by the government. And I'm not talking about other ecumenical bodies being like gatekeepers, no. But the government should be able to set a certain criteria of credibility, of assessment, to say that, well, if this number of churches meet these conditions, then they can form an ecumenical body. Or we want to stay with what is existing now. If anybody is forming a church or has a church, it must identify with one of these. They are free to choose anyway, and that freedom is still there. I think that is the only way I can see we having a solution to this literally perennial problem that Ghana is facing when it comes to abuse and charlatans, people calling themselves ministers and pastors. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, what happened in Mankasim, supposedly by a pastor. I wouldn't call such a person a pastor. Somebody who kills and, kind of connives with the chief, allegedly, and they have buried 3-4 bodies. And he's still being described as a pastor. He's not a pastor. Excuse me, he's not a pastor. He is subscribing, he is calling himself a pastor, but by his deeds, it is so evident this is not what pastors do. And so I think there must be, from the government side, there must be some guidelines, some boundaries to keep, religious practice in shape so that the citizens are not abused, they are not taken advantage of, they are not swindled and all of that. I think that is what I want to say for now.
I see. Quite interesting. Let me bring in the lawmaker. Honorable Bejra, in the Bible, Jesus came to a situation where he had to lash or whip people in the temple, people who were changing money, etc. Now, we don't have a situation where people are changing money. We have a situation where people are purporting to be doubling money in the church. Will the legislature or will the law become the Jesus of our time to try to sanitize the space by, enacting some legislation to specifically deal with the churches on the so-called fringes, so we bring all of them somewhere to the middle? Before you answer that, can you confirm to us whether indeed there is a legislation or a bill in Parliament seeking to provide some regulation of a kind for churches or religious bodies?
Well, thank you very much, Salom. Yes, there's no bill in Parliament as such. What we've heard of so far has to do with the charity bill, which has not even come to the floor of the House or been admitted in the House yet. And so we will not say that there's a bill in the House. Having said that, Salom, this is not a recent event. It's not an issue that we say that it started yesterday. It started way back Jesus' time, as you mentioned. Jesus had to whip people in the temple. He got angry and whipped people in the temple. And even in Paul's time, Paul stated in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33, he says that, look, God is not an author of confusion. And so in the congregation of the saints, there should not be any confusion here or there at all. It is gullibility of people not understanding what the scripture says, that makes them to believe in certain, certain people that they are men of God. If you are like Berean Church, where you believe that the word of God is the finality, is the last thing, and you need to understand the word of God and follow the word of God. You will not go to a church where there'll be magic, a practice of magic, which is the doubling of money, and then you followed such a person as a religious leader.
Is it magic or a miracle? Will it be magic or miracle in the context of a church?
If we use the word doubling of money is magic. I mean, I don't see it as.
But Jesus fed the multitude with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes.
And that's miracle.
He performed, yeah, so that's a miracle. So
that's a miracle.
Yes, doubling of money could also be a miracle.
Let me explain the difference. The doubling of money bring to 4. Give me 1 CD or 10 CDs, and I'll give you 100 CDs. I'll give you, $100,000 or 100,000 CDs. Now, in Jesus' case, the people were hungry, and he fed them. He didn't ask them to, give me 100 loaves of bread. It was only one person who brought 5 loaves of bread, and he prayed over it, and the people were all fed, and some were left. He did not double as we know in magic arts, double the bread and so on and so forth. He prayed over it, and God, multiplied it. Now, just by the way, we have a fundamental law, that is the Constitution, Salom. And this Constitution has restrained all of us by making a law. Now, as I was reading Professor Kofi Kwashigan's material on the state and religion, you will notice that this thing had been with us for years. In the 1989, PNDC has come out with the PNDC law to regulate and register religious body. Yeah. Unfortunately, the same as religious group did not, accept it, and that fizzled out. And so, in the coming effect of the 1992 Constitution, we have inscribed in our own Constitution that Parliament cannot come with any law or regulation that would prescribe or ask a religious body or political body how they organize themselves. And so, Article 56 has made that restraining force on all of us, that we cannot come out with any law, we cannot come out with any regulation that will regulate how a political activities will be done or how religious body will be done. And so, Salam, this is where we are. Until we change the fundamental law, the Constitution, we will not be able to do anything with the current law that we have. We can come out with, the charity law bills that we are talking about, but as to how that will infringe on our own Constitution is another thing altogether that we need to look at, as Professor Koshiga has mentioned.
We should change the Constitution to restrict the right to religion, freedom of worship, etc. Is that what you are calling for?
No. For me, I'm not calling for that. If that's what Ghanaians are looking for, if that's what the men of God are saying, that we need to regulate the religious body, then why should I say we don't want it? If the whole nation wants it, and I mentioned that before this Constitution, the PNDC has tried it, but it did not work. And so I don't know whether when we call for it now, it will work, because it has been with us even since Jesus' time. And so how come this time, when we have a law or a regulation, it will work?
I see. Reverend Dr. Ansah, I'll come to Suleiman Ibrahima very soon on what the role of the media and all of that is in this discussion. Is it time to broach the matter of regulating the church? And what should that regulation mean if at all we have to? Because we tried it before, PNDC law 221, it didn't quite work. Your people, fought against it because perhaps they thought that the PNDC regime was being heavy-handed. Upon hindsight, shouldn't we have done anything like that?
I don't still believe so. You see, that's why I started by saying that a few weeks ago, Kingdom Equipped Network, we organized a platform. Ace and Kumar was there to speak. And this is not the first time. He's spoken about this thing several times, and I've listened to it. And the message is clear that there are enough regulations. There is enough laws.
So you think the problem is with enforcement?
Well, yeah, to a great extent, it's enforcement. And let me explain why the enforcement, part of the problem, why we have these enforcement issues. One, see, the public understanding of religious or commitment and interest in religious matters, there's a lot of sentiments involved. That's one. People in authority, over the years, benefit a lot of times, over the years, from some of these same people who sometimes get out of order. You see, so sometimes there's a conflict, even the enforcement, and it includes even law enforcement officials and many people consult, they go to these same people. And so when there's trouble.
But the church should be a safe haven. When the people, are tormented by the difficulties of life and they run to church, the strong tower, they don't have to be met with quote-unquote charlatans, people who will take advantage of their ignorance.
If it's a charlatan and say a member of parliament or somebody in high opposition, maybe a judge or a senior military person, a senior police officer, is an elder or an active person in that same person's congregation, then you see that's where the difficulty sometimes comes in. Because when it comes to enforcement, people use influence to say, mitigate, can we do this? Before you realize, a lot of these things don't go very far. So that's one side. The other side, which I want to drop before you bring Suleimana, is that even the media, in terms of understanding the landscape, the spiritual landscape, there's a problem. Because, you see, some of the people that oftentimes I refer to, like my brother mentioned about this case in Mankasim. If you have a religious media front who understand the differences in the quality of ministers, some of the people they are referring to as pastors, they will not refer to them
But if he's a pastor and that's how his congregants call him, who am I to say he's not a pastor?
Oh, but you see, in other jurisdictions, in America, if somebody is not a mainstream minister, somebody is a deviant, they have a way of letting the public know. The media has a responsibility.
Very well. I'll take a quick break. You brought in the media. Suleiman Brahima will address that. Your messages are still coming to us on 0550 585-832. I'll read quite a few of them after this break. So after the break, we'll look at the matter of, so for example, somebody sends a message and says that Paul Kagame closed over 200 churches in Rwanda because most of the pastors need to have theology certificate before they can operate because they are playing with people's faith. But in Ghana, it's a business and government must wake up. Jacobs Bote says, so we'll look at all of these and we'll also see whether the focus or the seeming focus on the prosperity message is to blame for all these quick, how do I call it, quick fixes. Getting rich quickly. All these schemes are to blame for these devices we are beginning to see in society. Don't go away.
Has 5 flavors: banana, strawberry, chocolate, coconut. What's the 5th one?
Banana.
Banana?
Okay, Dad. Including mocha, Cowbell has 5 flavors: banana, strawberry, chocolate, and coconut. What is the 5th one?
Strawberry.
No.
Are you feeling hot?
Honey, including mocha. Cowbell has 5 flavors: strawberry, banana, chocomalt, coconut. What's the 5th one?
Chocomalt? Hey! Coconut!
Hey!
Nutritious and refreshing, Cowbell has a flavor for everyone.
They think I don't know.
Cowbell, our milk. This advert is FDA approved.
Mommy.
Michelle say. Fe. Yum.
Different era, better result. Time has changed and time has brought Kel Choco Toothpaste. Healthy gums, anti-cavity, fresher breath, and it whitens teeth. Kel Choco Toothpaste. Sankofa.
Yenchi. Kel Choco Toothpaste.
Happy smile.
This advert is FDA approved.
Yeah, welcome back to the point of view. We are looking at the matter of Nana Agrada and the money doubling matter, and we're trying to extend that to suggest that it appears that the people of God, or the persons who go to church generally, are quite gullible, and it appears that because there is no regulation so much, everybody, irrespective of the person's character or morality, sets up a church and do what they know how to do best by misbehaving. You know, we've seen quite a number of those in recent past. For example, as one of my panelists did say, in Mankasim, we currently have a live issue where one pastor, self-styled pastor, and a chief connived to kill a young nursing student also, and two others. That matter is still being investigated and it's before the court, and that's supposed to be a pastor. We've also seen over the weekend Nana Agrada supposedly seeking to double money for people, took money from them and then vanished, and the people were unhappy. She's been arrested, remanded today into police custody. So Dr. Kobna seems to be suggesting that the media has a role to play. In fact, he's actually blaming the media somewhat for projecting such men and women of God. Mr. Suleiman Brahma, you have been working with the media. Some time ago, I know the National Media Commission and the National Communications Authority closed down some stations because of the kinds of things they were showing on TV, etc. Is the media to take any part of the blame at all for our current state in terms of our religious organizations and churches more especially?
Well, thank you very much. I think the starting point is to find out which type of media we are talking about, because we are in a context where the same groups that we are talking about are also themselves media operators. So whether you are talking about Obinim TV or Adakwe Yadom TV or Obosom TV, or all the other ones that you can talk about. So if we are talking about blaming the media, are we talking about mainstream media such as, say, Citi TV or Citi FM, or we are lumping all of them together and say we have to blame the media? I think as a country, we need to do a very, very serious introspection and reflection about what is happening. We are in a situation where all that matters to people is money, whether in politics, whether in business, whether in religion. And I'm not talking just about Christianity. In fact, all religions is about money. And the same people who attend these churches where they are preached, they are told all the prosperity gospel and all of that. Eventually you see somebody breaks away, is on the wayside preaching and claiming to be a pastor, putting out the words of God. But it's quite clear that these people are all over looking for money. And it appears as a country, we don't seem to care. The broader thing for me is the moral decadence. We are in a country where, people don't care about lying. People don't care about stealing. People don't care about pilfering. It's almost like literally everything is normalized. And we seem not to have leadership, whether from politics, from religion, from business. It appears we've lost it all. Everyone is interested in cutting corners to make money. And for me, that is the biggest thing. And the institution that is established by the Constitution to ensure that, at least as citizens, we are inculcated or we have the moral values, the civic duties, the civic responsibilities has been abandoned. The NCCE is the least funded institution, in our country, but the most important institution for our democracy, for citizens' empowerment, and all of that. I would wish that, our honorable members, Honorable Bejra is here, consider matters like that. But coming back to the question of the media, I think part of the problem has been the conduct of the National Communications Authority, the body that has been established by law to authorize frequencies for operations. Because without their actions, all these stations that we are talking about cannot exist. We live in a country of about 30 million people. And as at the last count, if you take, let's say, radio, you have the NCA authorizing 698 frequencies, out of which 502 are in operations, as at the last, very latest data that is available in March 2022, 502 radio stations. Now we are talking about television. And the NCA has authorized a total of 148 television stations, and out of which 112 are in operation. It is important to look at the growth trajectory. As at the end of 2016, we had a total authorized frequency of 98, and then 51 television stations in operation. That is as at the end of 2016. And what it means is that between the end of 2016 and now, the number of television stations has more than doubled. If you take radio stations, it is about the same. And you go to Kenya, a country with over 50 million, 55 million people, South Africa, over 60 million people, and they don't have these numbers. And in fact, some of these countries even have the capacity to be able to better regulate than we have. And yet it's almost like once people will pay to get the frequency, we are willing to give them out. Unfortunately, that is the situation we find ourselves in, where the regulators can no longer have control over what happens. And as you know, by our regulatory framework, we have the NMC that is supposed to deal with content, is under-resourced, doesn't have the resources to work. We have the NCA that is supposed to, authorize frequencies, has all the resources, all the monies, but they don't care about content. In fact, they don't even have the power to deal with content issues. So our regulatory mechanism within the media sector is totally confusing. And it appears that people are not also willing to ensure that the right things are done. So talking about blaming the media, the NCA has given frequencies for people to operate their own television stations as churches. So you watch Obinim and he's whipping a woman for not staking the lotto numbers that were given at church. And a woman who is made to carry a bag of cement because the person refused. You watch and then somebody is asked to remove their shoe. And then once they remove it, a passport is removed from the shoe. That, we can give you a passport right there in the church, and you open it and there's a visa for you to travel out there. We watch all those things. So you listen to some of the radio stations, and this issue about money doubling. I've called a number of radio stations several times. I said, Masa, what you are doing, is it really proper? To say that, look, we have this, Nana, they are sitting here, and they will advertise the person even before the program starts. So it's not just on television, it's on radio. And it's because the frequencies have been given out. Once people will pay, come for it.
But,
so
for me, what then is the role? Can the National Media Commission, step in to ensure that such crude content, are not, churned out so that we protect the public, the masses, from consuming such? Is that not the work of the National Media Commission?
That is supposed to be the work of the National Media Commission. But as I said, this is a commission that it was established long before the NCA was even established. And yet, as we speak, the National Media Commission doesn't have its own offices. It actually is perching at the old offices of the NCA, which now serves as the Greater Accra Regional Office of the NCA. In fact, some 2 years ago, the NCA threatened to sack them from their building because they were owing them rent. So you are talking about a commission that doesn't even have its own premises, not to talk about the capacity to be able to monitor all these number of radio or television stations that we are talking about. That is the reality of the National Media Commission. It doesn't have regional offices. The NCA has regional offices all over, and yet doesn't deal with content. That is the media regulator that we have. But some efforts have been made. When the Kasua teenagers were murdered, and then it was traced to content that the people who killed them had watched about somebody who was saying, I could give you this if you brought body parts and all of that. There was a multi-stakeholder convening. We met at Alisa a couple of times. Eventually, the NMC was supposed to coordinate a multi-stakeholder mechanism that would ensure that if content was detected on a particular network to be, dangerous or unprofessional, some action could be taken. And it brought together, the GJA, the NMC, the NCA, the Ministry of Interior, National Security, GIBA, almost all the actors who are supposed to be involved in this. MOUs were developed. I remember there was a commissioning ceremony, a ceremony to outdoor it. We were there at the offices of the NMC, the Greater Accra Regional Office of the NCA, where the NMC is perched, to sign it. But since then, we've not seen any action on the part of the NMC or any of the other actors. And again, it is about a question of resources.
Very well.
If they don't have the capacity to monitor content, how do they act on content? Unless maybe somebody can complain.
Very well. Let me speak to Apostle Emmanuel Tete. Apostle, Suleiman Brahma appears to suggest that the matter it goes beyond almost everybody. It's a societal problem. It causes moral decadence. But again, what then is the role of the church? The church is supposed to mold character. Discipleship. Do you not think that the preaching of the prosperity message has, pushed us far away from this core mandate of preaching discipleship, teaching people, the core doctrines to build them up? Laying on of hands, resurrection from the dead, eternal judgment, and all of that to build the faith of the Christian so that he or she is able to decipher, read between the lines, and know which is right, what is right and what is wrong. It appears we've left that and we are chasing prosperity.
Yes, Salom, I will respond to that, but please give me a couple of seconds to say something about previous discussions. I think to a large extent, I agree with Honorable Bejira that as a people, we need to revisit our constitutional provisions regarding, religious worship in terms of introducing some element of regulation. And on that note, sorry to say, I disagree with Reverend Dr. Ansah on his view that seems that there are enough laws. I don't think there are enough. And that flows into the question you just asked about the kind of messages we are preaching today, the kind of members we are raising. Rightly so, because the system is so loose, is so unchecked, that anybody, coupled with freedom of expression, anybody could just say, I'm running a church, and he could preach anything, anyhow. Nobody cares what training he has had. Nobody cares who certifies him or her. Nobody cares whether this person has a message. It is from that position I hold the view that we towing a middle line, not fully controlling or regulating what kind of worship or church you want to be in, but there should be some kind of regulatory mechanism by which, even if I want to establish a church today and I start a church and I need to be registered, there should be an existing ecumenical body which can assess and say that, given what you are doing, we agree that join us. There must be some code of ethics that is guiding the various ecumenical bodies, said that when they are accepting people into their fold, it means that church is on solid ground in relation also to our laws, in relation to bringing up people in the faith as we know and as we all want to subscribe to. I mean, at the same time, you give leverage. There are a number of bodies. So people are free to choose. If they want to establish, they must establish according to some criteria that they meet from the side of the state. And so if this is not there, anybody can get up and preach any kind of message. And it's because that is happening because training is being thrown to the dogs, training of ministers. Nobody is regulating training. Anybody can do it anyway, anyhow. And so, like other people have said, church has become a business for some. And to the extent that I have the numbers flocking to my church and I am making some money out of them. I mean, I just tell them what they want to hear. And I keep telling them, prophesying falsely to them, oh, tomorrow you will be rich. Bring this. Tomorrow I'll have this anointing. Get salt. Go and put salt and palm oil in the crossroads at some Inquanta somewhere.
It's called Inquantre. It's called Aquantre.
You know, we have all kinds of statements, and there is no biblical reference. You know, there is no boundary. And I think without boundaries, this is going to get worse by the day. This is going to get worse, and we'll all be complaining, and we can't do much.
In 30 seconds, will you subscribe to what's happening in Rwanda, where, for example, you must have some certificate in theology, for example, before you can pastor a church? Is that the kind of thing you are looking at, just in 30 seconds?
Not necessarily like a university degree certificate, but there must be some basic training, which makes people want to say that we want you to associate with our ecumenical body. There must be a way of certifying, not necessarily like a university theological degree,
very well,
but some kind of certification for you to with some ecumenical body. That way we can be sure it will not completely eliminate, but it will use to the minimal, I believe. I mean, these loose end, all kinds of messages running around and people doing everything. And on that note, I agree with Reverend Dr. Ansa that poverty is also making people so gullible. I mean, they hear, bring this, I'll give you this, and people are running to it because they want an escape. But beyond the poverty, I think as a people, we've also come to a place of wanting quick money. It's not just poverty, but we've come to a place where people want money and they want it today. They don't want to work.
But the church must have a remedy. But I'll come to that after this break. Let me take a few of your messages and take a quick break. Come back and we'll look at what we can do moving forward. So we see if we can suggest some ways to sanitize the environment. Good evening, Citi TV. I think the government must start to regulate the church to avoid all these kind of embarrassment to the body of Christ. From Bismarck Okansi. Mr. Brahima cannot exempt the mainstream media for projecting such charlatans as pastors. It's because the media men cannot differentiate between a God-called pastor and a satanic projected person. You said Daniel Akpaliok from Sandema says, Nana Grade's action is, but to say the least, unacceptable, criminal, highly condemnable. Authorities should ensure that she faces the full rigors of the law. The police should expedite action to ensure that all persons involved in money doubling are arrested to serve as a deterrent to others. This act has a tendency of bringing Christianity into disrepute in the country. We'll take a quick break. We'll return and see what solutions we can prefer for the sector moving forward. Don't go away.
The power, the performance, concentrated power, Concentrated Performance, the partnership of Concentrated Power. So Clean, the official regional partner of Paris Saint-Germain.
For decades, we have helped businesses connect with their trade partners all over the globe. From Ghana to Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Senegal, China, Morocco, France, Netherlands, and many other countries. We have made it possible to bring Ghana to the world. We have brought small and medium businesses closer to their customers across the regions in Ghana with our SME support facilities. We have brought relief and smiles to the faces of families with our employee personal loans. With our cutting-edge technology and digital support, we take the burden of complex thinking off you, making life simple. That is who we are, as close as a partner. Bank of Africa. We are indeed the African bank with the global reach.
All right, you are welcome back to The Point of View. We are discussing the recent matters involving churches and pastors finding themselves on the wrong side of the law. Case in point is Nana Agrada, who calls herself an evangelist. She says she's a reverend, actually. I heard that today. I don't know who ordained her, but she appears to have a thriving church. And over the weekend, she asked people to bring money and get the double of that. She said it was fundraising. And so that's where we are. She's been arraigned before court and she's been remanded, I understand. Let me come to you, Honorable Bejra. I'm just wondering, I mean, from your point of view, what is the way forward? I mean, we've discussed this before. We've been at this before. Is the solution only with amending the Constitution? Can't we find a way of doing this? Rwanda is doing something. I'm not saying we should do it the same way, but can't we find a way of doing this?
Hello. There's always a beginning somewhere. Rwanda has done something. Let's look at what Rwanda has done. If what Rwanda did is helping that nation, Rwanda, if it comes to terms of economics and growth, development, I believe that all of us will agree with me that Rwanda has gone very far in terms of development, economic development in that country, even though they came out of war. And if they have thought it wise that, restraining or having some regulations that will help the moral society, being the churches, is the way forward. And they did that, and the country is growing. I don't see anything wrong with us going that direction by, putting some measures in place, just as Reverend Apostle Emmanuel has mentioned. In the past, I used to think that, why didn't this PNDC Law 221 work? Why didn't it work? Even though I was young then. But now I've realized that it should have worked, but because our own religious leaders did not accept and did not agree to it, because they believe that Ghana is a religious state. Yes, indeed, the preambles to our own constitution made it a religious state, but because of the restraining, it is now a secular state. And so if the preambles of our constitution say that, state that in the name of Almighty God, I mean, make mention of God as the giver of this constitution, and we, the people of Ghana, has come to agree that we should have this constitution. So it means that Ghana is a religious state. We have acknowledged the fact that God is in affairs of everything. If that is it, then God that regulates things. That's why God gave us the law. I mean, the beginning, he gave us 10 commandments. And that 10 commandment is to regulate our activities. And you all know, Salom, that even a common law, some of the fundamental common law comes from the Bible, from the word of God. And so thou shalt not kill. If thou shalt not kill is a law that comes from the Bible. Why can't we also have a law from the same Bible that will regulate us that, look, before you become ordained, you must go through the 12 disciples, what Jesus did. He has 12 disciples, he taught them. And after teaching the 12 disciples, they also gone ahead to mentor others, 72, and they also went ahead and have following. We have a lot of the groups, like the Catholic conferences, we have the Charismatic and Pentecostal Council, we have the Christian Council of Ghana, we have the free clergy, whatever you call them. They all have their this thing. Can we empower them to regulate their own members?
Very well.
That before you are giving a license to pray, you belong to one of these.
Very well. Thank you so much. Suleiman Abrahima, 30 seconds. What will be your concluding remarks on this discussion? It's a discussion that we must have very often until we see a change. What will be your concluding remarks on this? Just in 30 seconds, please.
Well, I think that we as a country must take the issue of moral values very, very seriously and do the kinds of things that would inculcate in the people of Ghana the right attitudes. Otherwise, I don't think that will go anywhere. We are talking about what Kagame did in Rwanda. I don't think that Kagame, in the midst of challenges facing a country like we were or have been going through, would decide that a priority is a national cathedral. We are a religious country to a fault. And so I don't see any leader saying that, look, I'm going to regulate this, do what Kagame did. They wouldn't do that because that would affect their votes.
Very well.
And so for me, it's about getting the people to have the right attitudes and the right mindsets.
Very well. So very quick one, Apostle Tete, you think that the laws must change, but we also think that the messages we preach on Sundays to our congregants must also change to reflect the changing form of society. Just 10 seconds on your for concluding remarks.
Yes, Salam, I still believe that, you see, if we are saying that our messages should change, how would we ensure the messages change? That can happen if I belong to a certain body, which is kind of
ecumenical bodies.
That happens, yes.
Very well. Thank you so much. Apostle Reverend Dr. Emmanuel Kwabena Ansah, your concluding remarks, so we will finish this quickly.
Well, thank you very much. We started this discussion with that clear understanding that this discussion is not new.
Yes.
The topic has been flogged many times. There have been statements that have been made to the extent that, to the effect that Ghana is a religious state and all of that, which is not actually accurate.
We are a secular state.
We are a secular state. And I think that apart from ACE, others have said this many, many times. So I don't think we should belabor that point. Much as we have more we are more inclined towards a Christian religious state more than anything else. But the truth of the matter is that by law, we are not a religious state. So bearing that in mind, I would also say that the obligation or responsibility of curbing these things does not lie only with the ecumenical bodies. The state has a first stake. And I want to re-emphasize that there is a lot of laws already.
And we must enforce the laws.
And enforcement is key.
Very well.
And then also, the individual must take charge of himself in terms of knowing God. If you know the Lord yourself, some of these deceptions, because let me just quickly read something, one line from my book, in page 81, I said, but they're talking about the attitude towards merchandise and false prophets. But there will be false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privately will bring their damnable heresies, even denying that the Lord brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many will follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth to be evil spoken of. This is what we are seeing in Ghana. And through covetousness shall they with vain words make merchandise of you.
Very well. I think the point is well made. So thanks so much.
If people are reading and hearing the truth,
let me on this note introduce your book to the rest of the world. So Reverend Dr. Emmanuel Kwabena Ansah is authored a book, End Time Invasion, False Prophets and Cause, and I think it speaks to the subject we are discussing. I think you can grab a copy from any bookshop available. It was forwarded by Apostle Professor Opokunyina. So this is how we conclude today's edition of the show. Thanks so much for listening. My guests have been Emmanuel, Reverend or Apostle Emmanuel Tete, General Secretary of the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, Reverend Dr. Emmanuel Kovna Ansa, Secretary Director of the Kingdom Equipped Network, and Emmanuel Kwesi Bejra, MP for Who, and President of the Parliamentary Service Workshop, and then Suleiman Abrahima. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you some other time. Thank you.
The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it. Kel Charcoal Toothpaste. Kel Charcoal. Happy smile.